Hmm. No, it's
Because
going off real good. It is going to be recorded. It's just the last 30 seconds or so went off there. We don't
we
know
should be
why.
back on now. Let me know if we are.
All right,
We are
so
streaming now, it appears.
Okay.
I think it was
Um,
the Illuminati. They didn't want all this kind of cult knowledge out
no,
there.
it always
Um,
happens to me though. Like on the day that I have to do. That was not my fault. That was Steve's fault. Everyone, Steve
I tripped the power grid.
messed with the settings. All right, so we've got one more Mary, I believe, that we need to. Let me pull my page back up. Give me 1 second to pull this back up here.
See,
All right.
had we had a stable power supply, like some kind of electric sun, we wouldn't have had a problem with this.
Uh oh. Uh oh. Shots fired.
oh,
Tesla, Tesla, just
I'm gonna
broadcast
let.
the energy out there. You know,
All right.
Okay, so here I think this is the last image of Mary. Again, she's standing on a gray orb, which is likely. Actually, she's got a serpent under her feet. She's standing on the moon. Again, she's got the white dress, the blue cloak. Again, reoccurring theme, clouds behind her. So the Virgin Mary is the constellation Virgo. To me, without a doubt, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the Virgin Mary is the constellation Virgo. So, to me, if the constellation Virgo is in fact an anthropomorphized version of the Virgin Mother, the Virgin Mary, then that means Mary never existed. That means Jesus never existed. And that means that Jesus is, in fact, a solar deity. He's an anthropomorphized version of the sun, like all other gods, or most other gods.
And I take it we're going to Jesus next.
Um, there is, in this batch, I don't know, they might be grouped. You said you tried to keep them together.
Yeah.
There's an image, oh, here it is, Revelation 12, the woman clothed with the sun and moon at her feet. Clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet.
Okay.
So that's Revelation 12 that discusses all the shit that I just got done covering with these images. There's one more screen grab from Stellarium. It's called Sun in Virgo.
All right. Let me see. Sun in Virgo. Okay. I just gotta match it
It's a
up
bit.
with. It's one of these.
Let me switch pages.
I think it's this one, right? Hold on.
Keep this image handy. I want to come back to this one.
I think it's this one that you want.
Um, Actually, it should be a little bit more blue, and it should actually say September 11th. Should be some text across the screen
That
right
one?
there. There it is, right there. Yes. So this is actually what happens on the day of September 11th. There's that, red flag number. Everybody's ears should perk up. On September 11th, the sun is born in Virgo. This is a fact. This happens in the sky. You can see it with your own eyes. But again, here's a better image of Ophiuchus with wrestling the serpent at the feet of Virgo. So let me see. As I mentioned before, like all the stories you ever heard, like fairy tales and tales of heroes and shit, are also told in the constellations. And I'll give you an example. Mary, or the Virgo constellation also represents, for instance, she represents Alice in Wonderland. She is Alice. Hang on, I know I'm jumping around, I'm sorry. Before I get to that, I want you to notice that she's carrying a chaff of wheat in her hand in this image because that's part of the constellation artwork.
Mm-hmm.
She's carrying a chaff of wheat, just like all those other images of Mary in the Renaissance artwork. There's always a chaff of wheat because she represents September. That's the month of Virgo. That's the harvest month when you begin to harvest, and that's why she's associated with wheat. If you do a Google search or look up the meaning of the Virgo constellation, the meaning of that word, the constellation Virgo is associated, it's known as the house of bread. And there's a direct tie-in with Jesus, which is the son born in Virgo. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Bethlehem, the town of Bethlehem, is also known as the house of bread.
Do you think that you know, in some instances, there are people that think that the different zodiacs have the ability to either influence or alter, you know, your path, your future. Do you think that the zodiacs hold any a sort of significant
No,
ability to do that? Okay.
no.
Um,
I personally don't. Um, but I wouldn't put it past the physics of the universe, because we have electromagnetic forces, we have gravitational forces that are actually affecting people. And I'll give you one example that is beyond a shadow of a doubt. The moon, for instance, is a direct correlation to the menstrual cycle of women.
Interesting. I never
So
heard that.
in some way, there is some influence. I'm not going to speculate on what influence. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to say, oh, well, you have Venus in retrograde, that means you're going to have a good year. No, no, no. That's not me at all. Okay, I'm not that guy. But I don't doubt for a minute that there is some kind of influence. What influence and how it impacts us, I don't know. But the moon definitely has a direct effect on the menstrual cycle of women. There's just no question about that.
Um,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's been
coral,
studies on that, but but
coral.
they've, correct me if I'm wrong. They don't have they've seen a statistical abnormality, but they haven't had any reason to suspect that it actually is caused by the moon, if I remember correctly. But they have actually done scientific studies on that.
Well, I don't know if it's the gravity or the light of the moon, but
Well, gravity
coral,
wouldn't affect
when
anything.
when coral spawns, it is a direct relationship to where the moon is on a very, very specific day. All the coral spawns all at once, and there's been studies on this as well, and it is absolutely directly related to what the moon is up to.
this is it's amazing when you think about like all the shit that you don't know, or my mind
Just
just
a second,
blows
sorry, this one sec.
when we do episodes like this. Okay, so
Okay,
what
so
was
let's
the next one that you wanted me to go to? The Mary with
let's. Yeah. Since you had this image up, I just wanted to talk briefly about like Alice in Wonderland, for instance. If you look directly to the right of the Virgo constellation, you'll see what's called, it's the sextant constellation, and it's literally, the artwork is a sextant, like a mariner would use, a navigator on a ship. Okay, this is also known as a looking glass, and somewhere I've got an image of the Stellarium app that shows, if you follow a line from Mary straight through the looking glass, what you'll see is the constellation of, I forget the name of the constellation. That's a good one. That'll work. It's the Dog Star. So just to the right of the screen center is a dog chasing a rabbit. And the rabbit is facing straight down. That's the Dog Star Sirius. Just barely, just to the right of the giant ship, which is in the center of the screen.
mm-hmm.
So that's Mary looking through, or excuse me, that's Alice looking through the looking glass, looking at the dog chasing the rabbit down the rabbit hole.
Okay, so let me ask this question: are you saying that this was the inspiration for what became Alice in Wonderland, or is it
Yes.
that people are able to look back and
No,
retro?
I'm saying that. No, I'm saying that the constellations were already in place before the stories, and the constellation formation, when people decided, oh, that looks like a dog, so there's pareidolia again. So somebody looks in the sky or the clouds and they say, oh, it looks like this, it looks like that, and they make shit up. And then eventually we have established constellations that everybody agrees on. Yes, that's this one, that's that one. There's Sirius, there's Argos, there's Ophiuchus, there's Bootes. So they established these constellations, which are unmoving. There's your firmament, by the way. They're fixed stars. So after the constellations are established and agreed upon generally, then stories are made up regarding, because I mean, if you look at this image, look at all these characters. You could make up any fucking story.
My question, like number one, are the majority of these astrological entities attributed to in terms of like who named them or set out the
A lot of
shapes?
Many of them were actually named by the Arabs. A lot of them get their name from Arab culture. Many of them are Greek, some of them are Roman, some of them are Hebrew, but they're very, 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 very freaking old. These constellations are so old. They're more than 12,000 years old, and the evidence of that is in Göbekli Tepe. Hope I pronounced Göbekli Tepe,
Mm-hmm.
because there are stones in Göbekli Tepe that show a couple of constellations. The constellation of Scorpio is prominent, and there's another one which is a swan or a bird or a duck of some sort, and I forget the name of that constellation, but it's also a relief carving on one of the pillars at Göbekli Tepe. So
I have seen that too.
center of the screen is the ship. Alice in Wonderland, if you recall, her father was a wealthy business magnate who made his money on shipping, and it's all here in this one single image. So Mary looks through the looking glass and she chases chases the rabbit down the rabbit hole. And then right there is the ship, which is where her father made all his money. This ship, by the way, is the same ship. This is the constellation Argos. So does that ring a bell to you?
Argos.
Yeah, I know what Argos is. That was the
Jason and the Argonauts.
Jason Argonauts. Yeah, Jason Argonauts. I'm thinking the skeletons, right? I'm thinking the clay animation with the
I don't
skeletons.
even know what that is. What's an Argonaut?
Jason the Argonauts is one of the first claymation movies ever made. It was one of the most iconic.
An Argonaut is a shipmate or a mariner who sailed with Jason on the boat which was called Argos.
Yeah, I remember that now.
This might be a dumb
I remember the
question,
movie.
but I'm going to ask it anyway, just because it's like blaring at me. The dog, the rabbit, all that I can make sense of. But how do you set out a constellation of a looking glass? Because that's a pretty complicated instrument. How would they do that far back?
I can only assume that that particular one that you're asking about came after the fact, because first there were mariners, and then the looking glass or the sextant was invented as a navigational tool, and then at some point somebody looked up and said, hey, that looks like blah blah blah, and that makes sense because it's here and it's right next to her and it's associated, and so again pareidolia plays a big role here.
I got you. That makes sense.
And by the way, I knew what you're talking about a little bit. I did a little bit of look up on it just now. The correlation between menstruation and the moon. Etymologically, menstruation comes from the same derivative from the moon. I mean that they're etymologically related. But on one study, they found a slightly significant correlation. Another study that showed none. Their overall consensus seems to be that the relationship is believed to be a coincidence. But a meta-analysis study done in 1996 showed no correlation between human menstruation cycle and the lunar cycle. So it could be a coincidence. One study did show a slight significant statistical significance, but they're thinking that was probably coincidental. And on further studies, they weren't able to correlate with that. But it is kind of odd that the fact that the word menstruation and moon have the similar etymological derivation. They come from a similar source. So who knows? There might be something to it.
Cool. Hey, I'm prepared to be wrong, but I mean that's good info. Thanks for that. Before we change slides, I want to point out at the very, very top right corner, you see what look like two dancing fools just above that horse, right off the horse's head. Or you see these two. Those are the twins. That's Castor and Pollux. Okay, those are the twin stars and the twin constellations. They're known as twins, Castor and Pollux. Remember, Jesus was crucified between two thieves. That's Castor and Pollux. Jason and his Argonauts, and by the way, an Argonaut was somebody who sailed on that ship, which was called Argo or Argos, which is the name of this constellation, the ship. Two of his shipmates, two of the Argonauts, one was named Castor, one was named Pollux.
Interesting. Those are very strange connections. and how it just all works out.
It goes back to, again, the associations are with almost every story that you've ever heard. Puff the Magic Dragon, because there's a constellation that's a giant dragon. He lived by the sea, and you can open up your Stellarium app, and you can put that dragon, and you crank the clock so that the whole sky moves and rotates until the dragon is right there on the edge or the horizon of the ocean. And then you just look up at all the other constellations around him, and then you start singing that song and reciting the lyrics to yourself, and all of a sudden all that shit starts popping out, and you see, oh, that's this, that's that. I mean, literally almost every story you've ever heard comes from this right here.
Interesting.
There's a really good channel called 88 Finis Temporis. And for anybody who wants to look that up, it's not 88 as in the number 8. It's Roman numerals. So if you know how to type out the Roman numerals, you probably don't even have to. If you just type in Finis, Finis, Temporis, chances are you'll find them. But it's Roman numeral 88 Finis Temporis. Fantastic channel that shows a lot more detail on some of the things that I'm talking about here.
Okay. Got it.
There's also another channel called Influence Freedom. I had her on my show. We did, and once or twice. That the dog star Sirius is directly associated with Keanu Reeves, and she opened up a couple of screen captures from some of the Keanu Reeves movies. One in particular off my head was the movie Constantine. The very beginning of that movie, where he starts coughing, it's raining, he bends down, and for some reason this crab comes crawling out of nowhere on the curb of the street and literally walks right over the top of his hand. And so that's the crab, that's the constellation Cancer, and because he's suffering from lung cancer, of course, but Keanu Reeves, the actor, is directly associated with the dog star Sirius in a lot of his movies. And Influence Freedom channel, she makes a whole bunch of connections with Keanu Reeves and his movie roles as characters and how they're associated with the dog star. And so does Finis Temporis. But another really, really interesting little gem of information is if you know Keanu Reeves, he's got a band, and that band is called Sirius.
Mm-hmm.
What
No,
would be the? I guess this kind of loses me a little bit because I wonder what the reason to single out Keanu Reeves and put these sort of things in his movies. Like,
well, it's not just Keanu Reeves. A lot of go ahead, Steve.
His band's not named Sirius. His band name is Dog Star.
Dog Star.
It's
Dog
a
Star.
nickname for Sirius.
My bad.
Correct.
So
right.
My bad.
So yeah, what's the reason that they would do that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, making these connections in these movies and the sky. What does that ultimately do for whoever's directing it, producing the film? What would be the reason?
I'm not going to speculate on what's the reason. All I know is that the people who write these movies and write scripts and write books that become movies, they study this kind of shit, and this is where the ancient stories come from. These are the stories that stand the test of time. I don't know if there's some kind of cabal magic, and I'm not even going to speculate on any of that shit. I don't know how that works. So there are other people who would love to tell you all about how cabal or Kabbalistic magic works.
Yeah. I see, and I see the the rabbit and the dog and the looking glass. Like, I can see that, and I can make that connection pretty much with no issue. Like, that to me, whether it was retrofitted in or it was the film was based on that doesn't really do much for me either way. But singling it out to Keanu Reeves, like, specifically and saying that he has he himself has a connection with, I just think that's a huge leap.
There's a constellation that Charlize Theron is associated with, and I forget the exact name of that constellation, but it's very close to her last name, Theron. I'm sorry, I just don't remember the name of that constellation, but it's a wolf, otherwise known as the Beast. and Charlize Theron is associated with a lot of her movie roles have association with this character in the sky, this constellation. But here's another one for you. Castor and Pollux, up in the top right corner, the twins. Do you ever see that movie Face Off with John Travolta and what's his name?
Nick Cage.
Nick Cage.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. So you know the movie where they change faces, and basically they're kind of like twins to each other, and they pretend with each other's wives, and they have this problem because they've exchanged faces, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know what their character names were in that movie? One was Castor and one was Pollux.
If anybody was going to have a stake in the heavens, it would be Nicolas Cage, because he literally comes out with a movie every month. So that one I can buy. I can buy the Nick Cage one. Okay.
But their names were Castor and Pollux in that movie, and then the movie was Face Off, where they exchanged faces. Castor and Pollux are the twins.
Do you think that there's a deeper meaning there? I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that there's something
yeah,
deeper?
Yeah, but I don't know what that deeper meaning is.
Maybe they just thought it would be a cool like Easter egg for somebody to figure out later on down the road. Like, there's no deeper meaning to that.
Maybe. But I'm sure there's somebody beating their head against their computer who wants to talk about the Kabbalistic magic of Hollywood. And by the way, if you don't know, Hollywood is made from the wood of a holly tree, which is what wizards made their magic wands out of. Okay, so there's something weird to all this. I don't know how deep.
You know what? But here's the thing, though. I don't think that there's anything weird. I think what happens is people put these little Easter eggs in movies, just to be kind of. I do it with our channel, and in the first 256 videos of this channel, there is a piece of an image that I tore up into 256 pieces on a computer and hid them in the thumbnail. You can actually go back and see if you can find these pieces. I did that for two reasons. Number one, to be an asshole, to see if somebody would actually go back and put them together, and two, because I thought it would be something fun to do. There is no deeper, darker meaning to that picture. It's just a funny image that I broke up and did this. Maybe it's just that. Like, I can appreciate these cool connections and the the way that it all kind of has it all fits together. But what worries me is when you go beyond that point, when you start to think, well, wait a minute, that can't just be a fun thing that they wanted to do to kind of see if we could figure it out. There's something darker and malevolent to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It might be Easter eggs. I'm not the guy who's going to sit here and try and convince you that there's creepy occult magic happening in Hollywood. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I can't say that there is. I don't know that there is, but there's some weird connections, and they're deep. The rabbit hole is deep, and somebody has done their homework when they create these characters and write the scripts, for sure. I mean, they're not pulling this shit out of their ass. That's for sure. And you guys have even said this on the show. We are pattern-seeking creatures. Humans are pattern seekers, and people like me and others are noticing that there are these patterns. Like I said, I'm a big movie buff, and I've noticed that movie villains happen to have scars on their fucking heads and foreheads, like Snoke. And at the end of Iron Man 3, the fight scene, the villain guy played by Guy Pearce,
the Lion
he gets
King.
There you go. Oh, and the lion, by the way, the Lion King, there's a direct, there's Leo the lion, the constellation. So there's correlations all the time that almost always point back to the stars, to the sky.
Let me just let you know briefly. We are approaching almost 2 hours now, so we are cutting it extremely close on time. So I don't know if there's anything that you definitely want to get to specifically.
Let's go to the batch of Judas.
So Steve. All right, the batch of Steve. Okay. All right.
Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is the character everybody who knows their Bible. Judas is the guy who identifies Christ to the Romans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of odd because it was such a small town that anybody and everybody would have known who the hell Jesus was when he walked into town. There's no reason to identify him. he was surrounded by 12 disciples. So 12, there's your constellations again, a reference to the constellations. But I want you to scroll quickly, because the first thing I want you to point out is in symbology, colors are important. Like I was pointing out the colors of Mary's dress. She wears white because she's pure, and blue. So pay attention to the colors of Judas. If you just do a Google search on images of Judas Iscariot, you'll almost always find yellow, orange, and red. So Judas is associated with the constellation of Scorpio, and Judas represents the month of October, and October is one of the ember months. September, October, November. These are the ember months, when the sun is dying, when the sun is low, everything gets red, just like a sunset, everything gets red. And during winter, when the sun is dying, all the leaves on the trees, they turn yellow, orange, and red. So that's why you see Judas Iscariot, all the artwork of Judas Iscariot is almost always going to be orange, yellow, and red colors, because he's associated with the month of October, which is the month of Scorpio. So Scorpio, here's a really, really interesting fact. And I have a Muslim friend who actually confirmed this to me personally, because I heard it somewhere and I wasn't sure and I couldn't verify it. And she it was born in Jordan, and full-blown Arab Muslim friend of mine said, absolutely. So here's the story. There's a scorpion in the Middle East that has 2 stingers on its tail. It's a rare breed of scorpion that exists, I think, only in the Middle East. But nevertheless, there's a scorpion that has a double stinger, and when he stings you, the wound that it leaves on your skin looks like a pair of lips, like a woman with lipstick kissed a piece of glass. Do you know what I mean? It leaves a lipstick wound on your skin. That is known as the kiss of death. And that is why Judas kisses Christ, because Christ is the sun, and in October, the sun is dying and going into winter. So the month of October is the constellation of Scorpio. And Steve, I guess Steve is probably trying to verify this. Steve, I tried verifying this. I could not find actual verification of a scorpion that had a double stinger. But if there's anybody who's in the chat or in the audience, if you're Muslim and you know what I'm talking about, speak up, because my Muslim friend, and I'm not making this up, I'm happy to say things. If I don't know, I'm happy to say I don't know. But my Muslim friend absolutely confirmed, yes, there's a scorpion. Yes, with a double stinger. Yes, it leaves a wound. It looks like lips.
Well, you have to remember the think that horses can fly to the moon and cleave them in half.
Yeah, the only thing I seem to be finding is there's actually a mutation of a bark scorpion, which is very common in Arizona and California. There's these types of desert scorpions, but there's an image of a bark scorpion, which is a double stinger, but that's just a mutation. That's an Arizona bark scorpion. They're not very friendly creatures. We get what's called California scorpions. They look just like bark scorpions, but they're not the same species. But they can get to be anywhere from like that size. I've seen them up to like that size. They're intimidating as shit. They're generally harmless.
Yeah, the bigger they are, the less less harmful they are.
People keep
the
these
tiny
things as
ones
pets too. Why?
People keep all kinds of things as pets. I mean, California scorpions are generally harmless. They make okay pets if you don't mishandle them.
It's not like you can play
I
fetch
guess.
with them.
Not for me. I've been around them. I've lived in an area where we had scorpions all the time, and vinegar runes and things called sun spiders, also known as solidids. They're about that big. They're the ugliest creatures on the face of the earth. If Satan exists, he designed these by hand.
Aaron,
they're just ugly.
Can I ask you, since we are pressed for time, can I ask you, there are 3 pictures in here that are like absolutely gorgeous, and I'm dying to know what these are.
Go ahead. There's at least one more that I definitely want to cover quickly.
Sure.
Okay, those are screen captures. Those are artistic renditions. Those are screen captures from a David Talbot presentation from the Thunderbolts project. This is what they speculate. Hold still right there. This is what they speculate was seen in the sky. So that the red one in the middle is Mars, the white in behind is Venus, and the yellow behind that is the planet Saturn. So there was a planetary alignment, and then Mars, as they speculate, oscillated between Venus and Earth. It got close to Earth, and it moved back to Venus and back to Earth. And when Mars got close to Earth, the gravitational pull of Earth started sucking atmosphere and dust, and then eventually rocks and debris and water from Mars. And there are ancient petroglyph images that show these particular pictures that you're looking at right here, that show this giant red, looks like a mountain, or this is also, I speculate, I'm going out on a little twig of speculation. I think that this is the tongue of Kali, which is the destroyer from the Vedic cosmology. So these images are what you're looking at. Are this one particular, Venus is in the middle. There's some of Venus's atmosphere has turned into a ring, which looks like an eyeball with Saturn behind it. Jupiter would be behind Saturn, not visible from this perspective. But as Mars got closer and closer to Earth, more and more atmosphere, and then eventually dirt and dust, was basically drawn down to Earth, which was a source of one of the ancient cataclysms that most cultures talk about. Now, real quick, again, these are images, artistic renditions from what they speculate was seen in the sky from Earth, and all these images correlate to ancient petroglyphs and symbols that are found in cave drawings and rock carvings and shit like that.
Got it.
Here's an image of Mars coming close to a planetary body with a giant electrical discharge, rocks and debris. This is an image of Mars and Venus entrapped, one pulling atmosphere and plasma, dust, material, debris from the other. So this is like the source of the stories of the witch, or the old hag in many of the old ancient stories. Because Venus, like Mars is the hero, but he's also a villain. And like Mars, Venus is not only beautiful, but sometimes has terrible attributes. This is what we'll get into when I come back. We'll talk more about the electric universe. This is an electrical discharge in a laboratory on the left, and the image on the right is an image of one of the moons. I can't read quite clearly, and I don't remember which moon it was.
Callisto.
Okay, Callisto. So there you go.
Yeah.
Which one did you want to make sure that we got to before we wrap up?
There's an image called three deacons per constellation. I definitely wanted to cover this aspect.
Okay.
There are a grand total of 88 constellations.
Got it.
And in between each of the 12 constellations, there are 36 major constellations, 12 prominent, and then 3 per 12 are what are considered minor constellations, and they are known as deacons, which is interesting because if you go to church, most churches have deacons. So again, there's another reference to what happens in religion, what happens in the sky. And real quick, if you could, there's one more batch of 3 pictures. The file was labeled 3 Kings, Sirius star in the east with 3 magi. You got to see this before we close out.
Okay.
I have to make this point before we... Okay. This is the tale of the 3 magi, or the 3 kings, following the star in the east. This is the belt of Orion, following Sirius, the dog star, and it points directly at the setting sun. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There's the sun, the 3 kings of the belt of Orion, following Sirius, the dog star, which is the star in the east. This is the story of the magi going to find Christ, which is the sun, and they point right at the sun. Go ahead and go to the next one. And there it is, the Star of Bethlehem. Again, it's Sirius, the dog star, the 3 wise men, the 3 kings, the 3 magi, following the star in the east to find the Christ, which is the sun.
Basically, they're telling the story of the Bible in the sky.
Yes, sir.
And I think this is where the confusion, like we were talking earlier about the Zeitgeist movie. about the similarities between Jesus and Horus. Those exist in a astronomical sense, not on the actual physical day both of them were born, but it's told through the stars, right?
Yes and no. I'll give you an example. Tammuz of Sumeria was born on December 25th. He was born of a virgin. He was Lord and Savior. He was the healer. Mocked and humiliated, he descended into the underworld. He was raised from the dead. And that's from Sumeria, 2,600 years BC. That's the god Tammuz. There's the god Dionysus, which is the... I'm pretty sure, and if I'm wrong, somebody tell me. I'm happy to be wrong.
That sounds like it's from the Zeitgeist.
That's Horus. Zeitgeist does Horus.
Well, but it's also dropped in a lot of other gods too. They actually, there was like 10 different similarities they try to relate things to. It wasn't just Horus. It was other gods they try to say the same things to, relating to the dates.
Are you sure I watched it recently?
Well, I mean, it wasn't from the movie Zeitgeist. I shouldn't say that. You're right. That was strictly Horus. But but there has been derivations of that through these memes that relate to that Zeitgeist thing. So it sounds very Zeitgeist-like, but Zeitgeist did relate it.
I told him that Zeitgeist would trigger you on the phone today.
Yeah, you did.
That's why I wanted to make sure we got it in before we closed out. Yeah, are you I'm interested to find that out. Are you looking that up, Steve, about Tammuz?
No, I'm not. I'm reading the live chat real quick. Okay. Dr. Bowen would probably be the person to actually ask more about that.
I was going to say that would be...
Well, according to D.M. Murdoch, or otherwise known as Akaria S., there is like 180 parallels between Jesus and Horus. But even D.M. Murdoch, many of them have... Well, I wouldn't say all, but many have. D.M. Murdoch even says in some of her interviews that I've seen, she even says that there's probably a stronger connection between Osiris and Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's all completely wrong.
Horus, I know that Horus and Jesus, they're the stories told in the stars, like where the star rises in the winter solstice is at the same spot, and that's supposed to be why they have the same birthday, so to speak, because it's the same point at which the star rises, not because the actual day of December 25th they both share. Because I don't even think Jesus, do they... It seems like I was watching a Christian stream the other day and they were arguing over this, that one of them was saying that Jesus wasn't even born on the 25th, that it was...
Well, yeah, that was the date they got together and said that was actually a picked day out of random. They said, let's just pick this day, and they went with it doing one of their conventions. If Jesus existed, he probably lived more along the lines of, I think it was more, what they say, July, August, something like that. But yeah, December 25th was a completely random day they made up for him. Yeah. They said, we're going to do it on this day. And I said, okay.
All right, so we got... Let me get to let me say this first. Do you want to make any last points before I jump over and see if there's any questions or read the super chats?
I have lots of last points, but I think I'm going to go ahead and let you guys do your thing because I could go on for hours and hours. I've got a lot more material.
Well, we are going to have you back soon.
Yeah.
I'm thinking by the end of this month we'll do the Electric Universe if you're free.
Okay. I'll be in touch.
All right, let's see.
You've got my email. You've got my phone number. You just let me know. Hopefully a little bit more than a couple of hours notice.
Yeah, definitely this time. I'll make sure you have plenty of time to... all right, so I think last night I left off with Johnny V's, this is the same argument that race realists use. Dust Knight says, women are governed by their feels. These incels' arguments have been supported by nothing more than what they feel is right. There's only 6 more of these left, so then we'll get into tonight. So just hang tight. Helios575 says, you're incels because you are terrible people. Jeff C said, if purpose equals reproducing, incels have no purpose. Lloyd says he loves Shannon Q's laugh. Brian Stevens says, Stat 101, correlation does not equal causation. Sweet Heathen, I would never sleep with these guys based on personality alone. They could be hot And Rich, no thanks. They think they're logical, but they clearly aren't because, ironically, they're too emotional. Biblical history. Biblical history skeptic says on personality alone, I would rather bang Jaredism before these illogical, whiny, entitled little babies. I agree with there. Trevor Hudson says, doesn't complaining about not feeling appreciated by other women require a large degree of emotion? Yes. Helios 575. Incels are to society as flat Earth is to shape. I dismissed this last night because I would not even put flat Earth on that level. I think flat Earth, annoying as they are higher in rank than the incel. I'm just putting it out there. Travis C. says, if a married man wishes to have sex with his wife, even though his wife does not, in a patriarchal society, is the woman not obligated to abide? No.
According to the Bible, she is.
Yes. Yeah, according to the Bible, yes. But in the real world, absolutely not. And Steve and I actually covered an article, it was probably a week ago, with a Christian blog writer telling people that, or telling women especially, that she has to have sex with her husband even if she doesn't want to, even if it's painful, and to try not to cry during it because that would ruin his mood.
That ruins his experience. You can't make this shit up. I mean, you really just can't.
Naked Manhole. What a name. Naked Manhole. And it's not, I'm not saying it like super country. I'm not saying it like naked. It's naked. Nekkid. Manhole. Sounds like a giant pity party to me. That's correct. Sandring, $50 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Just for that ending alone, he says. 3 more. Josh Burry says, well said, Kyle. CW said, you finally said what they deserve to hear. Thank you, Kyle and Shannon. You're welcome. Biblical History Skeptic, sorry. Both of you had to go through all of that with those fuckers. Shannon and Kyle, you are both wonderful and amazing people. Oh, Shannon is, at least, I know. Godless Fighter Jet says, I was cooking while listening, but as soon as I finished, I had to say, love the way Kyle used technical nukes on these asshats. That's great. All right, so let's go to tonight. VRCNGTRX says, long live the NonSequitur Show. Caleb, did I hear 1080, Kyle? Don't make me come on here. Did I say 1080? Oh, yes. In reference to resolution, yes. Not the not that horrible poison that you Kiwis are using on those poor innocent animals on that beautiful island of yours. So, sorry, I'm poisoning shaming Caleb. You know, I'm just kidding. Christy Santiago says, for the Bulletinator, everyone do a little bit. Thank you. Mind of God, great platform for dialogue. Peace. Oshkosh Bagosh, what are your thoughts on the first 30 minutes of Zeitgeist, the movie? The religious portion of the movie, how much of it is legitimate?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I think so.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. If I remember, the first 30 minutes does speak to the topic that we were talking about tonight regarding the sun as it moves south in winter and then dies on the winter solstice, and perceivably it does not move north or south for 3 days, and then on the third day, which is depending on how you measure, it's essentially the 25th. So for those 3 days, the sun sets in the same place, and on the 25th, it moves 1 degree north, indicating winter. That's observable. I believe that's completely dead on. I think, I haven't verified this myself, but I do believe that, I guess I'll just go with what they said, that the Southern Cross constellation is in the sky above the sun on the solstice. I think that's true. So, you know, according to the pagans, the sun was everything to them. When to plant, when to grow, when to harvest, you know, when the birds and the bees did their thing. That meant everything for survival. So tracing the sun and knowing what the sun is going to do, when it's going to die, when it's going to come back, that was extremely important. So I believe all that is absolutely true. It's observable. You can watch the sun set in the same place for 3 days on the winter solstice. So I think all of that is pretty well spot on.
And 0132 says what he's wanting to know is what is do you have an ultimate point beyond these artistic motives are cool? So I think he's asking what's your bottom line with how all these things fit together.
My bottom line is, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that literally every story, or almost every single story you've ever heard, it has a correlation to shit that happened in the sky, and that includes literally all religion. I'm a mythicist. I do believe that Jesus is a solar deity, so everything the sun is doing is equated to Jesus. It's an anthropomorphized version of the sun. The sun has sun rays, which is the crown of thorns. If you've ever been to the beach or the lake at the sunset, you see that beam of light that goes across the water from the sunset. That's Jesus walking on water. So, all the stuff, not all, but a lot of the things attributed to Jesus are associated with the actual sun itself. So my bottom line is that most of the stories that you've heard, most of the nursery rhymes you've heard, everything from Alice in Wonderland to Puff the Magic Dragon, movies, movie characters, they're all associated with shit that happens in the sky. That's my bottom line.
All right. Do you...
And before we close, I do want to say one quick thing. I don't know if you have a bell ready or not, but flat earthers are fucking idiots. Ding.
That's
ding,
a
ding, 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 ding.
I believe that's a nod to our friend
Skeptic.
Team
Team
Skeptic.
Skeptic.
Yeah. Steve, have you heard how his battle is going with?
I had thought that the guy Pratt had given up. I thought that he just washed his hands of it, but I guess there's more going on.
There was a
so
big.
No, I don't.
There
know
was
the
a
full
big.
story.
A big collaboration video that he put together with all the other flat Earth debunkers. I don't know if you've seen it, where they all dress up with their hoodies on and they pretend to be Dan Pratt. I don't know if you saw Skeptic's recent upload, but it's a big collaboration. It's pretty fucking hilarious.
I did. He did. I think he did good on that. Okay. Steve, any announcements that you have that you want to put out there before we say goodbye?
There's 3 more super chats. You want to knock them out real quick?
Oh, are there? Okay.
Yeah. Whatever.
Oh, and,
if you have
and the
them pulled
next
up, go
time,
ahead and read them.
and the next time you guys have somebody, I'm sorry. The next time you have somebody debate a flat earther, please bring up the Southern Star rotation. Please, a flat earther, please explain how we observe Southern Star rotation, and I'll shut up. You can finish.
I got an email about that the other day, actually.
You're talking about Sigma Octantis, right?
Well, not a specific star as a point of rotation, but if you're in the southern hemisphere, you do see stars rotate around a central point. There may not be a star like we have Polaris, but there is clear rotation in the southern hemisphere. You can't have that on the flat Earth, no matter what.
Yeah, of course. The closest star is Sigma Octantis, but Baptist Bigotry for $10 says, keep debunking Christianity. Genius Tracks, $1. No message. Thank you. Genius Tracks, another $2. Skylar needs 9 more subs for 4K. Kyle, pants, please. Which do you rather have? The 9 subs for Skylar, or do you want Kyle to put on pants? Because the 9 subs is probably more likely to be that's going to happen.
I can tell you definitely the 9 subs is going to happen before.
Yeah, Kyle's not going to put on pants.
Pants.
Not until the stream's over.
I've embraced my pantslessness with the other day when like I told you guys, when I ordered from that new restaurant that opened up down the road, and we were in the middle of Friday Night Fights, and I ordered it in between, and he came, and I got up, and I went to the door, and literally had boxer briefs on, and a shirt jacket and tie, and I look like this from the top up, but not the waist down, and the look that I got just pretty much cemented that I'm just going to embrace this and just be me. You know what I mean? That's how I roll.
There you go. No, I'm definitely ready to call tonight. I'm going to be heading out after this, so I'm ready to jam. This was interesting. I look forward to having you back to dive more into the EU, because that is one subject I actually have an interest in, even though I totally don't believe it. I mean, like 100% think it's absolutely wrong.
Okay. All right. Well, give me 30 seconds. Kyle, pull up the slide. Let me see. There's a Thunderbolts folder. Symbol. Let me see. The 1 or 2 slides. One is called Cayenta, Arizona. Just this one slide might do it for Steve. Maybe.
Might work for me.
Okay.
It's called
Like I said,
Cayenta, Arizona.
It's called what now?
I read Velikovsky. I read Velikovsky when I was in high school. So
Kayenta, Cayenta, Arizona. Petroglyph versus plasma in a laboratory. Pull up, Steve. You has to see this one slide before I go. That's it. The one beside it. There it is, right there. That is a. On the left is a petroglyph. On the right is a plasma experiment in a laboratory.
What is your response? Your initial response, Steve?
Oh, I have no idea. I would have to see what the plasma was from. I mean, they look obviously identical, but I have no idea. I've never seen the image before, but I could look into it for them. It looks more like an earwig to me, but
I was thinking it was like a spine and the top of a pelvis.
I mean, I remember something similar back in the day. They had what's called Curlian photography, and they would take a leaf and take the two charged plates, and they would take a picture of the leaf, and then they'd cut the leaf in half, and it would show the rest of the leaf, right? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's dualism. It shows that there's something that remains after the material portion is removed. Well, come to find out that wasn't the case. When they cut the leaf in half, they used the same emulsion film, and so when they did the experiment again, it just had, used the same plates, and so it had moisture on it, and so the residual form of the leaf was caused by the residual moisture. So there was an explanation. So I'd have to look into it. I know, but people published books on this, and the Curlian photography was like, this is proof of this. I have to look into something.